The crystal chandelier above me shimmered like a crown of light, scattering gold across the ballroom. Dad's 60th birthday party was everything you'd expect from a man people whispered about as a self-made success. Waiters glided past in crisp black uniforms, carrying trays of champagne I barely touched. My emerald silk dress clung softly against my skin, the thin strap sliding once down my shoulder as if it too was tired of me holding back. I stood near the edge of the stage, smiling when people looked, because that's what Olivia Parker always did. The loyal daughter, the quiet supporter, the one who never asked for credit. From the outside, I looked composed. But inside, my chest carried a storm. The irony stung. 10 years of my life had been poured into this business, our family business. 10 years of sleepless nights, of turning numbers into strategies, of transforming a struggling shop into a $50 million empire. And yet tonight, every word of praise landed at my father's feet. Mr. Parker built something extraordinary, one of his old friends declared in a toast, his voice booming over the laughter and clinking glasses. My hand tightened around the stem of my untouched champagne flute, the cool glass biting into my palm. My phone buzzed quietly in my clutch. A text from an old mentor. Just 5 words. When will you claim it? I exhaled slowly, my throat tight. That single message cracked something inside me. For years, I had hidden the truth. For years, I had let my story be swallowed whole. But not tonight. Not at Dad's birthday party. I was 22 when I first stepped into the conference room of Parker and Sons. My heels were too high, my hands too clammy, and my notebook filled with ideas I'd spent weeks preparing. The smell of burnt coffee and dry erase markers clung to the room, a scent I would later come to associate with battles I fought and lost. Dad sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened like he was the general of a small army. My brothers, Jason and Mark, flanked him, both older, both convinced the company would one day be theirs. I was the only daughter, the extra chair. I've been running numbers, I began, flipping open my notebook. If we shift our product line online, streamline supply, and build direct relationships with customers instead of relying only on distributors, we can double revenue within 3 years. Jason smirked. Mark didn't even look up from his phone. Dad leaned back, his sigh heavy with dismissal. Olivia, he said, in that tone that sounded almost gentle but cut sharper than glass, you're good with details, but this business, it's not really a woman's game. Why don't you handle HR? Or maybe marketing? Leave the heavy lifting to your brothers. The words burned. My hands shook under the table, so I gripped my pen until the tip snapped. I forced a smile, but inside my chest, something fractured. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, tears staining my blouse, replaying the scene over and over. I wanted to scream, to prove them wrong, to run until I couldn't breathe. But instead, I reached for the one thing that always steadied me, a silver locket my grandmother had given me before she passed. Inside was a single line, etched in her cursive, "Build the life they cannot deny." Her voice echoed in my memory, calm, unwavering. Olivia, never wait for permission to shine. If they won't give you a seat at the table, make your own. That night, I made a decision. I would not shrink. I would not fade into the background of Parker and Sons. I would prove, not through arguments or begging, but through results, that I was more than the daughter who made coffee runs. I would build, and I would not stop. The first year was brutal. I worked in silence, tucked away in a corner office nobody wanted, staring at spreadsheets until my vision blurred. During the day, I played the dutiful daughter, filing contracts, sitting in meetings where my voice never carried. But at night, when the office emptied and the hum of fluorescent lights was my only company, I built. I taught myself digital marketing through free webinars and dog-eared textbooks. I researched supply chain strategies until 2 a.m, surviving on vending machine coffee and stale pretzels. Some nights, exhaustion left my mascara streaked down my cheeks as I rested my forehead against the cool glass of the office window, whispering, "One day." The turning point came when I met Margaret Dawson, our CFO at the time. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, the kind of woman men underestimated until she owned the room. One evening, she found me still hunched over my laptop. "You're either desperate or dangerous," she said, setting her briefcase down. I laughed nervously, brushing crumbs off my blouse. "Maybe both." Margaret studied me, then pulled out the chair beside me. "Show me what you're working on." That night, I laid it all out. My plan to modernize Parker and Sons, my vision for an online storefront, my projections that screamed growth while my father clung to tradition. Instead of laughing, Margaret nodded slowly. "You've got guts. And numbers that make sense. Let's test this." From that day, she became my quiet ally. She didn't hand me anything. She made me earn it. She drilled me on financials until I could recite profit margins in my sleep. She sent me into negotiations I thought would crush me, then stood back, letting me sink or swim. I learned to swim. Our first win was small, a mid-sized client in Chicago who agreed to a direct partnership. I remember clutching the signed contract to my chest in the elevator, tears pricking my eyes. It wasn't millions, but it was proof. The wins stacked slowly. A year later, I closed a deal that saved the company from losing a key supplier. Another year, our online sales surpassed traditional channels for the first time. Piece by piece, the empire grew. And yet, at family dinners, I stayed silent. My father praised Jason's networking skills and Mark's big ideas, even though both were more interested in golf than spreadsheets. I'd nod, sip my wine, and deflect questions with vague answers. On social media, I posted only modest updates, a photo of a coffee cup captioned "late night grind," a picture of my office plant. Never the contracts, never the numbers. Because part of me still craved their validation. And part of me knew, if they realized the truth too soon, they'd find a way to take it. So I wore humility like armor. I let them believe I was background noise. All the while, quietly, steadily, I built the life they could not deny. The ballroom pulsed with laughter, champagne bubbles, and the soft notes of a live jazz band. Dad stood in the center, surrounded by friends, business partners, and relatives who had traveled from every corner of the country to celebrate his 60th birthday. The Parker name glowed in gold script across the stage backdrop, celebrating 60 years of strength. Strength. That word clanged in my head like a taunt. I watched as an old family friend raised his glass. To Richard Parker, he boomed, his face flushed from too much whiskey. A man who took a small-town shop and built it into a $50 million empire. A man whose sons will carry the torch forward. The room erupted with applause. My father smiled, pride swelling in his chest. Jason and Mark clinked glasses, smirking as if destiny itself had already handed them the throne. I felt my nails dig into my palm. 10 years of my life. The sleepless nights, the contracts, the deals that kept the company alive, vanished under the sound of clinking crystal. I set down my untouched flute and stepped toward the stage. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step louder in my ears than the applause fading around me. By the time I reached the microphone, the room had gone quiet. "Before we continue," I said, my voice steady, though my heart pounded, "I'd like to add something." Dozens of eyes turned toward me, some curious, some annoyed. My father's smile faltered. "I've listened tonight to all the stories about how this company was built, about how Parker and Sons became the success it is today." I paused, scanning the room, letting the silence stretch. "And I realize there's a story missing." Jason muttered under his breath, "Oh God, here she goes." I ignored him. My fingers brushed the silver locket at my neck, grounding me. 10 years ago, this company was on the brink of collapse. Sales were flat. Suppliers were pulling out. We were bleeding money. And while some of us were playing golf or waiting for titles to be handed down, my gaze lingered briefly on my brothers. Others were working. Quietly. Every night. Every weekend. Building something sustainable. A ripple of murmurs swept through the room. I leaned closer to the microphone. That someone was me. The words hung in the air like a lightning strike. Faces turned. My father's brow furrowed. Jason laughed, a nervous, mocking chuckle. Come on, Olivia, don't embarrass yourself. I straightened my shoulders. Do you remember the online platform? The supplier contracts that saved us? The Chicago deal that pulled us back from the edge? That was me. Margaret Dawson trained me, but I executed it. I built the strategies, I closed the deals, I kept this company alive when no one else believed I could.
Gasps.
Whispered voices. My father's friends looked at one another, uncertain. And tonight, I continued, my voice stronger now. You're celebrating a $50 million empire. Let's be honest about who built it. The room went still. The band had stopped playing. Even the servers froze mid-step. Dad's face was pale, his jaw tight. Jason's smirk vanished. Mark shifted uncomfortably. I didn't flinch. For the first time in my life, I let the full weight of my truth fill the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, lifting my chin, you're looking at the architect of Parker and Son's success. The CEO in everything but title. The woman who built this empire, while the world forgot her name. The silence broke with gasps, a few tentative claps, and the unmistakable sting of disbelief. But I saw it, the shift. The cracks forming in the narrative that had erased me for a decade. For once, they couldn't look away. For a long moment, the ballroom seemed suspended in silence, like the air itself was deciding which way to shift. I could feel every heartbeat in my chest, every gaze piercing my skin. And then, slowly, I spoke again. I'm not here to humiliate anyone, I said, my voice soft but firm. I'm here because the truth matters. And the truth is this. I spent 10 years building this business. 10 years of sacrifice, strategy, and resilience. Tonight, I'm no longer willing to be invisible. My father's jaw tightened. Olivia, he began, but I lifted my hand, stopping him. For once, he fell silent. I love this family, I continued, scanning their faces. But love doesn't mean letting myself be erased. So from this day forward, things will be different. If Parker and Sons is going to survive another decade, it won't be built on denial. It will be built on respect. Jason crossed his arms, scoffing. Respect? You think you get to make demands? I met his gaze squarely. Not demands, Jason. Conditions. If you want to be part of this company's future, then earn it. Show up.
Work.
Stop hiding behind Dad's name and prove you can build something, not just inherit it. His face flushed red, but he didn't speak. I turned to Mark. And you, no more half-effort. If you care more about golf than business, then step aside. Pursue what makes you happy. But don't drag this company down out of pride. He dropped his eyes to the floor, guilt written all over him. Finally, I turned to my father. My throat tightened, but I held steady. Dad, you taught me discipline. You taught me resilience. But you also taught me what it feels like to be dismissed. I won't let that cycle continue. If you want me in this business, then recognize me as what I am, not just your daughter, but your partner. The words trembled with emotion, but they carried weight. For the first time, he didn't look past me. He looked at me. Around the room, I saw shifts, friends whispering, colleagues exchanging glances, Margaret in the back nodding subtly as if to say, it's about time. I'm not asking for control, I added, my voice steadying. I'm claiming the respect I've earned. This business doesn't move forward unless honesty does. So here are my conditions. Respect my role, respect my voice, and stop pretending I don't exist. If you can't do that, I let the pause hang heavy. Then I'll build something new without you. The gasps rippled through the crowd, sharp and shocked. The possibility hung there like a threat, but not from malice. From truth. I softened my tone, letting compassion edge in. I don't want to leave. I want us to grow together. But only if we do it right this time. No more erasing. No more shadows. The room was silent again. But this silence was different. Heavy. Awakened. For the first time, I wasn't the quiet daughter on the sidelines. I was the woman setting the terms of the future. And they knew it. The days after the party felt like walking through new air, heavier, clearer, almost electric. For years, My words had slipped past unheard, like whispers in a hurricane.
But now?
They echoed. Jason didn't speak to me for a week. Then one Monday morning, he showed up in the office before sunrise, sleeves rolled, actually opening spreadsheets instead of scrolling his phone. He didn't apologize, not in words, but his effort was its own kind of admission. Mark surprised me more. 2 days after the party, he knocked on my door with his golf bag slung over his shoulder. "You were right," he said quietly. "I don't love this business. I never did." His voice cracked, but there was relief there. He left the company a month later to start a sports consultancy, and for the first time, I saw him truly alive. And Dad was the hardest. He didn't transform overnight. Old habits run deep. But I caught him one evening, staring at me across the boardroom table, his expression softer, almost uncertain. Finally, he said, "I underestimated you. You've done what even I couldn't." His voice carried both pride and regret. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a beginning. For me, the shift was internal. For so long, I had carried the weight of invisibility, working in silence, letting others take the credit because I thought maybe that was love. But love isn't erasure. Love is seeing. Love is recognition. One evening, alone in my office, I opened the silver locket again. My grandmother's words shimmered back at me. "Build the life they cannot deny." And I realized I had. Not just the $50 million empire. Not just the respect of a room full of skeptics. But the life of a woman who refused to be invisible. I touched the locket, whispering into the quiet, "I did it, Grandma." Then I looked out across the city skyline, the glass towers catching the last blush of sunset. For the first time, I wasn't building in shadows. I was standing in my own light. And this time, they could not deny me.